are you seeing the window from the outside again?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm pointing out that above the window is where is that the security light?
Yes.
And so your husband said it's like a hair trigger. Like if you move your arm, if you move at all, it's going to turn on.
Very much so.
Okay. But if you were sitting back in your tub looking at your phone inside the lit bathtub, etc., it may have come on while the thing was coming up to approach the window and you may have not noticed it.
Correct.
And how long do you recall? Because they can be set for different durations. How long does the light stay on if it's just triggered and you just pass by it?
20 seconds.
And then it goes off. Wow. Okay. That's quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it was standing there holding very still for at least 20 seconds, it would be in the dark.
For sure.
But then when it would move away, it would trigger it again. And that's what you saw happening, that the light was triggered when you came up to close this window.
Right.
Okay. That explains it. And then also I wanted to point out that a lot of people would naturally ask if they were just reading the story, they would say, oh, well, I don't believe it because, or how come they didn't go out and look for tracks? There should have been tracks all over the place. And that's so, go ahead.
We looked for sure.
Yeah. And as your husband pointed out, he said, cows and horses could have walked across this and not left any footprints.
Right.
So, and that's the way it is in a lot of situations. It's actually rare that there's like, a whole bunch of sand or mud where you're going to leave footprints. It's like, that's why snow tracks are much, people spot them more often because if the Squatch walks anywhere, it's going to leave a footprint.
Right.
But this thing, if it came up out of the darkness, then it would have known that it's not going to leave footprints. So it's going to be able to get away and not be easily followed. But it obviously wasn't bothered too much if it did trigger the light, which the only way it wouldn't have triggered the light I see is if it really hugged the edge of the wall as it came up, because the sensor light above it has it's kind of a pie shaped, range of sensitivity. It doesn't look out like 180 degrees sense. So if you come up from the right angle, you might not trigger it. So, okay. So it was looking in very dark night. And then you went back inside and you told your husband, and then what did he do?
He, of course, got up and went outside. Well, and he took his gun because, we do live in the country, so you never know what animal is out there. And I know it wasn't a bear, but in that sense, I wanted him to take whatever precaution he needed to protect himself. And so he goes out there to figure out.
Let me stop you for a second. For audiences who just who would ask this as a question, how do you know there was no bears around there? And of course, the answer could simply be nobody's ever seen a bear around there. But what would make you eliminate bears as a possibility?
Well, we have seen bears, and we've actually caught bears on our cameras that we used to have. And I and my husband both have hunted all of our lives. I've been raised in the country all of my life. I've been around many, many animals of different kinds. And you learn, you're with those animals at all hours, depending on whatever the situation may be. And so I've seen animals' eyes at nighttime, and that is not your normal animal at nighttime.
Okay. And now let's talk about the eyes themselves, because this is such an important part of the story. And people hear this repeatedly, and it's good to be able to hear it again. And that is from talking with you earlier, from what you saw, these eyes were not reflecting light from the inside of the bathroom that was and then threw a screen back at you, but you think they were glowing.
Yes.
Okay. And that's, again, a very common thing. Actually seen a recording of it on a security camera one time. It's something that happens. And so you're yet another witness who's seen and describe what the glowing eyes were like, how big they were, how far apart they were, color, everything else. Because this is what you saw of the figure.
Yes, they were a deep red color, and it was almost like, it's not like a neon light, but it was like glowing like a neon light. But they were that deep red. And how I showed my husband how far apart they were 6 inches, about 6 inches apart.
Wow. And how big would you guess they were around? Did they seem like the size of a quarter or a 50-cent piece, or?
I would say, because it looked like I couldn't see the entire eye, just the part that was reflecting, or like not really reflecting, but like the glowing. I would say probably the size of a quarter, if not bigger.
Okay. And about 6 inches apart. All right. Yeah. Yes. Just to address the bear, because people say, well, they've seen bears and it could have been a bear coming up. The bears there don't get, I think, probably very big.
No, they're very small. What would you say?
Maybe 250 to 300 pounds maximum.
Yeah, they're not very big at all.
Okay. And when you saw the thing crouching on the other incident, it was crouching down and then it stood up real tall. It walked away upright. It didn't go back down on all fours when it left, correct?
No, it didn't go back down on all fours, but it didn't stay standing completely straight up like it did when it first stood up. It actually walked hunched over a little bit.
Okay. That's great, because that's definitely not something a bear would be able to do.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so up above, there's another image which I can bring up, which shows out at the corner of the house, there is a security camera that points in this direction. But your husband told me the amusing story, and it's so funny because it's so East Texas. You get so many storms in there that his security system and your router and everything else has been fried by lightning, not just once, but twice.
Yes.
That stuff is all fried. But you think the second time around, the camera itself, it did not fry, and so you might be able to hook it all up again?
Yes, we're actually in the process of trying to get cameras back out here again, or them to come look at our existing cameras versus if we need to get new cameras.
Okay. Very good. Well, because I'm glad you didn't get terrified by the thing, and you shouldn't, because I mean, if they attacked people, you would have heard about it. You know, you would know that.
I never felt threatened like it was going to hurt me. It was, I mean, just like in either incident, I think the first time, whenever it was with the dogs, me letting the dogs out, it was more of, well, with both incidents, it was like a curiosity, but I never felt threatened either way. The only reason why I hollered at my dogs whenever I let them out is because if one of the Labradors, if they know that something else is there that's not supposed to be there, it's going to try to keep it away from me because they're very protective over me. So I felt like if our Labrador ran towards it to try to scare it off, it would feel threatened, just like any animal would. And then it would attack, but not initially attack before it felt threatened.
And you're exactly right. If dogs come at them aggressively, then they can do some bad things to dogs real quick.
Exactly.
But if not, they don't attack. And again, I mean, you would know it's if they're, an animal attacks across the country are not going to be kept secret. You would have heard. And of course, some people would have survived the attacks and lived to tell the tale and have the injuries, but it's never happened. So, if he sets back up the camera, I see again, we have the image up where he's standing by the window. If you were to carry on, and take a bath again, have the window up, recreate the whole situation, because this happened only a few days ago, and it didn't have a terribly bad experience when it came. It wasn't scared off real bad the last time. Then it may come up and check you out again, especially if you've got music or some kind of sound coming out of there with the window open for it to think, oh, so somebody's in that room again.
Right.
And then he may get footage of it if he sets it all up. And what I'm seeing here that's interesting is if it would get the footage from behind, which is, that would seem bad. You're only going to see the back of it, but it's also less likely to see the infrared illuminators, the little red LEDs that would be around the camera. But would it be, if it's coming from the woods that you think it would be coming from, or the direction, is that the direction that your husband is facing in the photo? In other words, was he walking in from the left if he would have walked in the way you think it came?
There's woods on 3 sides of our house. On the left side, the right side, and the far side, like going forward.
Okay, so it might have come in from any direction.
Correct.
Okay. Well, at least the presence of the camera is already installed there. 8 cameras. It just wasn't on.
Right.
And the question is, would that have deterred it? And, I would think if a sensor light isn't going to deter it, then it wouldn't necessarily be put off by this camera system that it already knows is there, but it has little red glowing lights. You'd have to assume that it knows that that's illumination for a camera. And I don't think it's going to figure that out. But obviously it's not put off too much by other kinds of illumination, like the light coming out of the bathroom and then the sensor light on the wall, above it.
Right. And I mean, not to mention my parents and my husband's parents live on the same land. We also have chickens that have a heat lamp it's a light that consistently stays on right now while we have the rare occasion of cold weather in Texas. And I know my parents keep lights on in their backyard because they too have dogs that they have to let out. So lights are on up there. We just have the motion lights back at our house. And so there's always lights on out here.
Excellent. Well, you can lean on your husband to get those cameras working again. And I'm so happy that you're not afraid to just take a bath and do the same thing. Because it's it's a special animal. What I want to do, I'm going to stop the share and then go to another screen back to Google Earth, so we could talk about the howls and which which directions, with respect to Ebenezer, which direction do you think you had been and describe those occasions when you heard the howls, and where do you think they were coming from? Which way?
I personally think it come from the south.
Okay. I'll zoom out a bit. Yeah. Long stretches of woods, both north and south. So you think it was coming from down south, straight south?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
Okay. And about, a mile away?
Ooh, I would say at least 1,000 yards. It was a good ways off.
Okay. So that was the first occasion.
Correct.
Okay. Let's go to the next one.
The second occasion was actually down the road, the FM road, probably about 3 to 4 miles down the road.
When you say down the road, which way? North, south, east, west of Ebenezer?
It's going to be east.
East on straight east.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the location that where she was, Now, when she was there, I'm not sure which direction it was coming from while she was on that property.
I'm not good at directions, but I can say my dad and I were there to get a hog out of a trap, and it was very, very close.
Okay. Do you think you were kind of about halfway in between Church and Ebenezer?
It would be
it'd be a little
probably-
bit further down.
Yeah, a little bit further down than the actual Churchill area, where I don't know if the fire department, the volunteer fire department, is on there. It would be, probably about a half mile past that.
Past Churchill. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's still in the same general area.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Still that Sabine River. Okay. And those were 2 times where you heard the long moaning howls clearly, the Ohio howl type howls.
Oh yes, definitely.
And what was their duration like? And what made you, was it the duration? What was it about it that made you think, oh my gosh, that's not a cow?
Right.
Oh no, like I've said, we know animals, and I really know animals. That is not a noise I have ever heard. Like, you can distinctly tell it is not a coyote. It's not a panther, a bear, a horse, a cow.
Yeah. I mean,
none of the typical animals you would hear on a farm.
yes. I mean, the best way to describe it is the classic Ohio howl sound. It was, the duration of it was just as long, or maybe just a tad shorter, but the pitch, the deepness of it, it sounded exactly the same.
It literally would make you not the scared way, but it would make your hair stand up on your arms, like
Yes.
or on the back of your neck.
Yes. Whenever we heard it, or the time that it was here on our property, whenever we heard it, it gave you chills. I instantly knew what I was hearing. Just from hearing the Ohio howl, I knew instantly that's what it was.
Great. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I was so happy to be able to get that and share that, because I knew it was so distinct. Yes. And I knew if people heard that recording and when they would hear the real thing, they'd make the connection, and you did.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So tell me how, you're seeing as much sign of hogs as you are deer in that area?
Yes, without a doubt. You can't go down the road, especially at right at daylight and towards the dark and even after dark, without seeing hogs or deer.
And not only that, like, we have ruts in our front yard right now.
From hogs.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Where they go in and stuff. So they do a lot of damage to property here.
And how much trapping are they doing, or helicopter or whatever?
Not so much helicopter, but you do have some private individuals that will do trapping, and it can be.
Yeah, we personally have 2.
Yeah, we have 2 traps, and but it can be on a small scale, a small trap made out of rebar or something like that, all the way up to the ones that you can buy that's like professionally made, that are 30 feet in diameter, and they're set on timers and motion detectors and all that. The gates will slam on them. They can get pretty elaborate, but yeah, they're all out here.
Yeah, we have to have them because we have massive gardens, and we have to protect those gardens because the deer and hogs like to come tear them up.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yes.
And so, how often are you seeing deer when you're what are you driving around around sunrise and sunset where you would see the most deer?
Yeah, most of the time it's early in the morning whenever we're traveling to go to work. So you're going to see deer, or you're going to see hogs, or you're going to see both. It's pretty much a guarantee. And then, of course, if you wait till right after sunset, you're going to see deer and you're going to see hogs.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that's why they're in the area. They're not there to look at people's windows. They're just doing their normal business, which is kind of the same thing that hunters and gatherers did in ancient times. They would, go around and forage and go after deer.
And not only that, it really has like the best place to be because we have a natural spring creek that runs through all of our properties on this side that we are on.
So you have clear running water on your property?
Yes.
And does it go through patches of thick woods?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's in the thick woods where me and my father both hunted all my life.
Okay. How often do you go out? And I mean, are there parts that are so thick you just can't get through them, or could you push through most of it?
Now on our property, you can pretty much push through it just because we have gone through it so many times, and we try on ours, like we own both sides of the creek on our land. So, we try to keep it kind of clean on our side of it. And then on the other side, it's kind of just left to do what it wants.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes it a little bit of a private property, no hunting sanctuary for whatever's going to, get into that thick stuff.
Right.
And it doesn't look like there's swamps really there. There's ponds and then woods.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any cedar around there?
I mean, there's a few cedar trees. I think there was a few of them on the property. My wife and I are both allergic to cedar trees, so we actually had to cut those off the property.
Okay. But no big cedar bogs anywhere in the area?
No. Mostly around here, if you get towards water, you'll actually have cypress trees.
Okay.
But no, not necessarily cedar.
Okay. How often, if ever, do you get snow?
Okay, so last February, we had probably about a foot of snow, and then the month before that, in January, so this would have been 2021, we also had a snow, and we got about 6 inches. So I would say it pretty much snows every year here, but it may only stick about every 5 years.
Yeah, because we saw snow this year, but it was like so minuscule, we might as well have said it didn't snow.
And how long did it last? How long did it stay on the ground?
Well, I mean, as soon as it hits the ground, it pretty much melts.
But last year it stayed for a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Really? You had a layer that stayed for a week and a half or 2 weeks, huh?
Yes, it was very, very thick.
Yeah, that was last February, and I think it was about 5 or 6 days in a row it actually didn't get above freezing, which is basically unheard of around here.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I would tend to think that because you're so far south that, I mean, up very far north, if there's only like a foot and a half of snow on the ground for like a week and stuff, people are all equipped and ready, and they'll go walking around, even hiking around if there's only that much snow. But I would tend to bet down in Texas, if you got that much snow on the ground, then there's probably not people walking around in the woods.
Absolutely not. No,
we're not accustomed to it at all.
No, I mean,
like our entire town was shut down because we don't even have the equipment to clear the roads like you're supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, if there's forecast for snow, they basically close schools, like a lot of people that have government jobs, like the courthouse and stuff. They actually just close everything down. So, just the threat of snow will close everything down.
Yeah. So, because in those situations where there's a foot and a half of snow on the ground for like a week to almost 2 weeks, then after a while, those would accumulate a lot of animal tracks.
Right.
But if you don't have people walking around in the woods or snowmobiling or cross-country skiing or the sort of stuff, the winter sports that people do up north, then no one's going to notice those footprints because they're just not going to walk around in the woods during those conditions. They're a little too busy shoveling out the driveway. I'd love to be able to update the report on the BFRO website at some point and say you put in a camera and you got footage there.
Yes, that would be amazing, because I'm telling you, if it comes back and that camera's on, we're probably going to get the clearest image of a Sasquatch that's ever been taken.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rare circumstance for that. And again, it's very recent, so the thing is probably still around there, and it'll probably be curious again. Well, I wish you all the luck, and let's hope for an update.
All righty. Well, thank you very much.